Remington podcast, where we take a deep dive into all things ammunition. I'm your host, Audrey Mayes, and today we are live at NRA 2024, booth 8644, the Remington booth, and we're here with Team Remington shooter Dustin Sanchez.
Hi, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. You got my name right, so good
yeah,
job.
See? Yeah, winner. Yeah. Dustin, you've been with Team Remington for a while now. I just wanted to start off with, how did you get into the world of competitive shooting?
Long story. I was actually doing some MMA with a really good friend of mine, Nathan Payne, and his dad was a big three-gun shooter in Minnesota, and his brother went and shot for the Army Marksmanship Unit. And one day he's like, hey, my dad wants us to go shoot a three-gun match. You want to go? And I was like, yeah, let's go. Had no idea what I was getting into, and we went over there and started shooting, and it was just a great time, had fun. I loved all the people there. They were just very nice, very open, like, hey, run this or do that. And after that, Nathan and I are both like, okay, we could go like beat up on each other and get beat up by other people, or we can just go run around and shoot guns. And we chose the more expensive sport, which was three-gun. And then it's just, a pyramid effect after that. It was just guns and shooting, and that year I shot 2 local matches, and then I went and shot one of the hardest major three-gun matches you could shoot, and after that major I was 100% hooked. Like, it was just there. So
yeah, I totally understand that. It's easy to have a good time pulling the trigger.
Yes.
Even if you don't win, it's like, wow, that was a great time.
100%. Yeah. And
So.
I think that's the coolest thing about shooting competitively, is that, of course, you definitely have those people that are there to win and they're going to compete at a high level. But when you're first getting into it, nobody has those expectations, right? And you can go shoot a match and not shoot the greatest, but you can definitely learn a lot from it and have other people help you out. And then you go shoot another match, and you'll see a small improvement. Sometimes you'll see some, huge gains, but every time you go and shoot, there's something else for you to work on and continuously get better and better. And I think that's what a lot of people are looking for, is just somewhere they can go and continuously have growth. And competitive shooting, no matter what discipline that is, there's always going to be room for more growth.
Yeah. And I mean, it's that growth that draws you in, right? Keeps you going. So I'm actually going to shoot my first three-gun match here at the end of May. I'm super nervous. You've helped me out with it. But yeah, I'm nervous. I'm hoping I don't make a fool of myself.
Look, I tell everybody, your first three-gun match is a major. So that's going to be fun. Like, it really is. It's, the thing is like, the first time you ever shoot, you're going to have like your whole game plan down of how you want to shoot your very first stage. And everybody's going to be like, you need to move into this position and take these shots here and do this. You need to do a reload here. And you're going to hear that, shoot, understand, course, fire. And you're going to be like, and you're going to run everything. And they're going to beep. And that beep goes off, and you're going to forget everything. And you're going to be just a mess, like running through there, punching out on target, shooting, trying. And you're going to get done, and you're going to feel like it was 10 minutes of shooting. And it was going to be like a minute of shooting. And you're like, I had no idea what happened. I completely lost everything.
Yeah.
Like, what happened? I wish I could have that feeling again, because that was my favorite thing, is my very first, like that. I think once you get past that, you're going to calm down, you're going to understand what's going on, and you're just going to be hooked. And then I expect you and I will be shooting matches together in the future. Yeah,
that would be so great.
Yeah.
I'm really looking forward to diving into this world. Can you talk a little bit about maybe what guns you ran in your first competition versus what you run now that you're kind of a seasoned athlete?
Yeah, so my very first match, I was really big into hunting because I grew up in Texas, and then I moved to Minnesota, and I was really big into dove hunting and things like that. So I had a Super Black Eagle 2.
Okay.
And they were like, hey, we can put a mag extension on there or tube extension on that, and you can run that for 3 guns. So I did that. And then I had a XD9. As just like an everyday carry pistol, and I didn't have an AR at the time, and so Brian was a chief of police, so he was able to check out a couple of ARs, and just ran like this, like straight up, very mil spec, AR.
Yeah.
And that was really what I started out with, and then I found a guy that could build me an AR. He built me an AR with some, we put some higher end parts in there, but I kept some of the other stuff cheaper because I just didn't have a big budget for that.
Right.
And then I moved into a Glock 17L. and kept as Super Black Eagle for years. And I just slowly, over the years, you keep kind of upgrading what you're working on and, what you're shooting, whether it's an AR pistol. And I got lucky enough that I got hired at JP Rifles, which is a high-end AR manufacturer, and they're really big into competition shooting.
Right.
And that really just changed my world, because then I was able to afford one of those rifles all of a sudden, and I got into that. And so that's kind of been my transition through everything. But I did eventually go away from shooting a semi-automatic shotgun to only running a pump shotgun in competitions.
Oh, really?
I loved it so much. I was actually, my splits were faster with it, just because of everything, the way it worked out with my, the ergonomics and the way my body was built and the way I shot. And I loved it. And it's still probably my favorite platform when I look at a shotgun is the pump shotgun.
Does it make you pay attention or be more in tune with what you're doing? Because I feel like if you're running a semi-automatic, then you kind of lose yourself.
Yeah.
But if you have a pump, it's you have to be in tune with what's happening.
So you'll see a lot of guys and ladies, and you'll see this when you're shooting your first. You're going to see some people shooting, and they're going to be peeking up over that sight to see if they hit. With the pump, I was shooting, and I was so worried about racking it to get another round in there that I just stayed buried. My cheek was buried. I kept my eyes on the sight, and I was just racking and going through and going, and I was really able to grow off of that platform a lot. And then when I kind of went back to semi-auto, it was fun, but there was something about, going to shoot Rocky Mountain 3-gun, which is 6,000 feet elevation, and they have a 200-yard dead sprint with, 60-something shotgun targets, and you got to run a pump shotgun. You're halfway through that, and you're just dead. You have no oxygen. You don't want to be, racking that shotgun anymore. And that was, those are my favorite stages to think about now. And I wouldn't have had that with the semi-auto.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
When you are looking for ammunition for these kind of competitions, are you looking, what is the thing that you pay attention to? Is it cyclability? Is it reliability? What are you looking for? So
it all depends on what I'm running, right?
Okay.
So shotgun, it's always going to come back down to keeping that shotgun running, right? You've got to have good shotgun ammo in there, stuff that's reliable, that will continuously, especially on a semi-auto, you've got to have something that's going to continue to cycle that shotgun. A shotgun going down in the middle of the stage can throw off your whole round count and loading, because it's probably the most technical type of loading you're going to do on the clock. So on the shotgun, that's really what I'm looking for, because accuracy is, shotgun, it's a shotgun.
It's a spray,
right?
Yeah.
When we get into pistol, I think the only time I'm really looking for true accuracy out of my pistols for my everyday carry stuff.
Okay.
I've ran, our 115 grain, I've ran 124 grain. For what I'm doing in pistol and pistol competition, they're cycling, great out of my Atlas. The accuracy is great out of my Atlas. So I don't really care about that. I'm not seeing a big difference in there. Everyday carry, I feel like every time, if I was to ever get into that situation, which, God forbid I do, I never want to be in that situation. Right. But accuracy is going to be the most important there, because I feel like every time that projectile leaves, I have my lawyer's phone number attached to that in that situation, right? So I want accuracy, and I want, that terminal velocity out of that round there. And then, when we get into rifle, that's really where I'm going to start paying attention. And that's really what I loved about Remington was the premier match with the 223 that I was running. That was what I needed, because, I shoot a lot of 223 gas gun for long range in the team matches, and I needed something that would consistently shoot sub MOA, and perform out to 700, 800 yards out of my AR. Right. So, yeah.
I remember that when we went up to Fort Campbell and you shot that match. What was it called again?
That was the Legion Sniper Challenge.
Yeah, that was my first introduction into competitive shooting at all, and it was a bad boy. That was so cool.
The match was fantastic. I didn't get to make it there this year, but I just was on a podcast 2 nights ago talking about that match, and they actually got CS, true gas, they got truly gassed, where they were coming out and they couldn't see anything.
They were crying kind of stuff.
And I'm glad I wasn't there for that.
You're like, I made the right decision.
Yes.
That's funny. That's awesome. You said that you were going to not necessarily leave the 3-gun world, but you're trying to jump into another facet of competitive shooting.
Yeah, so it's crazy. So I shot 3-gun for years, for about a decade, and then I left 3-gun and kind of really dove pretty deep and hard into long-range shooting with the bolt gun, running the 6 Creedmoor, and then the gas gun and the 223, and I loved it. I live in Minnesota. We don't have a whole lot of long range matches I can actually shoot there. So I'm going to stay in the long range, but I'm going to just be shooting my 22. Just I can get there's a lot of 22 matches for long range 22 matches I can do there. So I'm going to do a lot of that. But my biggest push this year is going to go into shooting PCC, so pistol caliber carbine. I'm going to be running the JP Enterprises JP5. I've shot USPSA matches, but I've never shot a classifier. So in USPSA world, I'm not classified as anything.
Okay.
So my goal is I've talked to a couple of the top shooters, and I'm like, hey, if I want to go from 0 to hero, which means I want to go from not classified to a GM status,
right?
How many rounds does it take? And how many months? And Dave Castro, really good friend of mine, he was like, hey, I did it in 7 months, and I didn't like just dedicate my time to that. He goes, so I think you could probably bring that down to like 6 months.
If you're really focusing.
If I really focus, yeah. And then Josh Fralick, who's a phenomenal PCC shooter, really good friend of mine as well. And he's a GM, but he's also one of the top PCC shooters in the world. And he's like, okay, I think if you go this many rounds and you train with me this many times a month, not only can you hit GM, but you can actually finish, maybe in the top 10% at a national match. So this year, my goal is 0 to hero.
Yeah.
And how fast can I do it? And what is it going to, mentally, what is it going to take? Physically, what is it going to take?
Right.
And it's going to be a lot of rounds down range. So it's going to be exciting.
It's going to be a lot of conditioning.
Oh, I know.
You can't be shaky.
I know.
Yeah.
I know.
After all those
So
movements.
I've never worked with an actual trainer. And I actually hired a trainer. I'm like, hey, this is my goal. And he's like, well, I need to see all your match footage. So I sent him stuff. He's like, oh, your movement's horrible. And I'm like, I already don't like you. And I haven't even trained with you yet. So we've been working on just a lot of the, just building the body up and conditioning it to be able to move through courses of fire, be very explosive within maybe 3 yards to 5 yards. But while moving around with an AR-9 in your hand. So, yeah, I'm really excited about it.
Yeah, that's so fun. I love jumping into new things like that, obviously. Like we just said, I'm going to jump into this head first, go into zombies in the Heartland. But I was talking to Heavy Shot Scott. I don't know if you've met him, but he was talking about the first time that he shot, I think it was IDPA, and he was noticing that he was because he's former military.
Yes.
So he was saying that he was worrying too much about being behind cover and stuff, and that your footwork's completely different, right?
Correct.
Yeah. How important is footwork?
Footwork is the easiest way to lose a match. There's a lot of guys out there that can be very fast and very accurate with their whether it's a pistol or their rifle, whatever. But within IDPA and USPSA, especially in those, the footwork is really what separates people. So if you look at, there's a shooter, his name's Max Legrandis. He's considered probably the world's best PCC shooter. His footwork is so good.
Really?
And you watch videos of him, and the way he's just moving in and out of position and how comfortable he is shooting targets at 25 yards while moving and still hitting the alpha, hitting the A zone. It's just, he's just so good at it. So it's like people like that, you just want to focus on and try to do that. So yeah, it's definitely different. And it's interesting you bring up, shooting behind cover and all that, because we're starting to see, in the military, in law enforcement now, where they're starting to have a lot more matches that are 3-gun and 2-gun related, because it is such a different world for these guys. So there's a match called Dustin. It's like the 3-gun Dustin Championship. Okay. And it's all SOF type guys that come in and shoot it. It's invite only. So if you're a civilian, you have to be invited to shoot it. And these guys are, they're top tier shooters, and they're losing to civilians, and they're like, why? And it's because it's just a different world, and they're like, hey, we need to get you guys thinking faster, moving faster, and trying to understand how to move through some of this stuff and really work on that footwork. And they're seeing that it's really transitioning back when they go back and start working with other guys within their unit. They're starting to see an overall performance.
Yeah, that's really awesome. I mean, it would be a great training tool, right? And I feel like if you're only focusing on real life scenarios, you're not really thinking about how your body's moving. You're just thinking about getting the job done, essentially. So, I mean, that makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah. But, I think, the Army Marksmanship Unit, which is also known as AMU, they've been doing it for a while. And those guys, they show up to a match, and pretty much, they're going to win that match because this is their job. but they're really good at, like, they'll go shoot these matches, and they may leave a match and go off somewhere and train soldiers for like 3 months and then show back up to another match. And they're taking what they're learning, whether it's the gear that they're testing, new optics or whatever, and they're transitioning that into the units and helping them just continuously get better and improve their accuracy and their movement.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
You mentioned optics. What do you run? What do you recommend to people? Maybe starting out versus you want to get more serious.
Yeah. Well, it depends on what you're shooting, but I think, I guess you got an example. Like you're talking about like 3-gun and what you run on your rifle.
Yeah.
I think really you just want to look for a good 1-to-6 optic. There's a lot of new options out there where you got maybe like a 1-to-10 that's the first focal plane or something like that. But typically for 3-gun, just get something that fits your budget, that at least has a 6 power. It's a true like 1 power, to, like a 1-to-6. And you're going to shoot really, really well with that. Most of the time, shooters are not going to outperform the ammo. They're not going to outperform the rifle or pistol, and they're definitely not going to outperform the optic, right? So it's more that mental game of, do I need to have the best gear out there in order to compete this, or do I need to, save my money to put that into ammo so I can get to the range and actually do true live fire.
Right.
And just have the gear that I know that I can't outcompete right now. And it may not be the flashiest and it may not be the best out there, but it's the best for what, my shooting ability at this moment.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, there's a difference between, like we were talking about before, entry-level stuff and stuff that maybe if you want to actually, compete and make this a livelihood, like there's a completely different spectrum of that. You mentioned live fire. Do you dry fire?
I do dry fire.
And how important is that, and how has it affected your game?
So dry fire, the dry fire there's pros and cons to dry fire.
Okay.
Because I've seen it where, with myself personally, and I've seen it with a lot of other shooters too, is you start doing dry fire, and when you first start doing dry fire, you're really focusing on fundamentals. And then you get to a point where, like, now you're going to try to speed that up. And then all of a sudden, like, you may, you do it during the off season. You're like, I've been doing 15 minutes of dry fire every night. I'm moving so fast. My mag reloads look amazing, blah, blah, blah. And then you show up to the range and, like, you just get slaughtered because you're not hitting any targets. Your follow through is horrible. And it's because you push your dry fire too hard and you push too fast. You don't focus on fundamentals. So I always like to start there because I want people to understand, when we talk about dry fire, it is extremely important to do dry fire. But you have to keep it controlled, and you have to be honest with yourself, right? Because if I punch out and I'm just doing dry fire and I don't have any lasers or anything on there, right? It's the trigger breaking. I'm watching my sight. Let's say I'm a pistol. I'm watching my front sight where it's at on that target. If I breaking it and I'm not being true to myself and I'm like, oh yeah, that should have been on, and I move on, that is going to transition into live fire. Okay. Because every bad habit that I create
in dry fire.
Correct. Brian Payne, he told me, he's like, practice doesn't make perfect, it makes permanent. Okay.
Habits.
Correct. Yeah. And that really stuck with me. And it was after, like, I did dry fire every night for an off season. And I was like, I came into that first local 3-gun match, and I was like, I'm going to make huge, like, people are going to be like, oh, he did so good. Yeah. And it was like, oh, he did so bad. Yeah, that's how it was. So now, like, when I do dry fire every night, I do 15 minutes minimum. So I just have a timer. I set the timer. And some nights, all I'm working on is, like, depending on, like right now it's a lot of PCC, so it's starting from the low ready, and I'll do 15 minutes of low ready. And, at first it may just be punching up to my shoulder. And then, after I get comfortable with that, then I'm going to punch up and just make sure I'm on target. And, my fingers on the trigger and I'm like right there. Right. And then I just slowly add to it to where it's one full cycle. Eventually, and I do run my shot timer on me as well, so I have a actual timer. Just shows me like 15 minutes goes going, and then have my shot timer, and my shot timer will do, I think it's like 45 cycles before I have to reset it. So I just let it go, and I do my dry fire every night. It is the most boring exercise you can do. Yeah. But it's always going to be fundamentals, and if you can hone in your fundamentals, when you get to the range and you're on a stage, the fundamentals will just flow through and do their own job and carry you through and allow you to focus on your stage plan and focus on like little stage designs that you need to be paying attention to.
People have been telling me as I prepare for this, zombies, is reloading is like really where you're going to trip up, right?
Yeah.
I mean, yes, firing the gun is important, but if you can't get the ammunition in the gun, what's the point of firing? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So
yeah. So in competition, it's all about time, right? I mean, accuracy and time. But if you do like a stand-in reload, somebody'd be like, "Well, it took you 3 seconds to do that reload. Why weren't you moving?" Because you could have been from point A to point B during that reload, right, on a pistol or even on a rifle. So it is. But I would say in 3-gun, your biggest reloading difficulty you're going to run into is going to be a shotgun. So are you running open? Do you know what division you're shooting?
it's amateur.
Yeah, but do you know? Okay. What kind of shotgun are you running?
I am borrowing just like you did, so I have no idea.
Okay, so I'm. So
you're like, well,
so
Audrey,
if you're shooting, open, you may be running like an AK style shotgun, which has a huge mag. That reload's going to be, just putting a mag in there.
Yeah, I mean that's what it has a mag.
Oh, it does have a mag.
So
Then you're good.
easy
right.
peasy.
Yeah,
I'm not like reloading.
Okay, so I was like, are you going to be quad loading? Then that means you got to throw it up on your shoulder and you're loading. That was like, if you haven't done that yet, we're behind here.
Yeah.
We need to get on that.
You need to get off.
But if you're running a shotgun that's mag fed, there will be some moments where you're, depending on how big that mag is, trying to manhandle that and get it in there. But I think you're going to be fine. But yeah, if just sit in the hotel room and just practice your reloads and get it down to where you feel pretty comfortable about it. I like to, whenever I switch over to a new platform and I'm going to be working on my reloads, I actually take a marker, and I typically have a bunch of gold markers on me, and I'll put a gold mark somewhere around the magwell. So like on my PCC, I'll be shooting, I drop, and I turn it this way. My eye will focus on the dot.
Yep.
Because that's my index point, and then my hand naturally will go right to where my eye is at.
Okay. Yep.
So I do that until I get so comfortable that it's just, it's muscle memory, and I don't even think twice about it, and then I move on. And so
and when you're wearing the mags on your hips, I hear that like ammunition faces forward, right?
yes,
So you never put the mag in backwards
correct,
when you're reloading things.
Correct. Yeah. And I've seen guys like stick a mag in their 2011s like backwards, and it's stuck on the clock, and they're like trying to fight to get it out. And that's the worst feeling in the world. Like any type of firearm malfunction on the clock is like it lives with you for a very, very long time.
Yeah, gun handling is like the primary thing and it's a little embarrassing, and then you get frustrated, then you're in your head. So we have a shooter, an IDPA shooter, Ben Bell. I don't know if you've met him yet.
I have not, no.
But he's the most like even kill, level-headed person I think that I know. And I went with him to a handgun competition, and he had a malfunction.
Yes.
I've never seen him get more frustrated.
Yes.
I mean, he like was beating his gun trying to get the mag in there and stuff. So apparently it can mess with you.
It does. It's because everything's going so well, right? Like mentally in your head, if you're having a good match, life is great, and you could be. I mean, in some of these matches, it's like a tenth of a second separates you from, the person below you or the person above you. So any little thing that happens that can't, like. You feel like it's your fault because, like, maybe I didn't clean the mag or I did something like that's going to just stay in your head. And I try to tell people, like, that was that stage. You have a malfunction, nothing you can do about it now.
Right.
All you can do is try to figure out how to get back, mentally get back to where you need to be and push through it. But it definitely, on the clock, it's
a big deal.
I've had it happen, yeah.
I mean, you got to have a short memory, right? That's the whole thing.
You have to have a short memory, yeah.
Yeah,
unless you break the gun on the clock like I did. Then there's just, that memory lasts for a while because you miss the next stage because you don't have a firearm because you're sitting on the, the tailgate of a truck trying to fix it. Yeah, that one hurts.
Man, that has to sting.
Oh, it does.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Wasn't funny at the time.
I mean, I'm sure, but how important is it in competition to keep your firearms clean? And how do you go about doing that?
This is a great question. It's important to keep them clean. It is. I don't clean my guns for locals. I just run them. I'm going to focus on a lot of stuff. But when I'm getting ready to go to a major, like you're going to a major, I want every firearm to be clean because I don't want that gun to fail at a major. At a local, if it goes down, okay, cool. Like I know, but I also keep round count of on like every one of my firearms has a book. I buy little notebook, little filled notebook, and I keep round count in every one of my firearms now, because now I know, like, okay, well, I have 5,000 rounds through it, and I had this malfunction. So then I could call, let's say JP, or I could call Atlas and talk to them about, hey, at 5,000 rounds, I started to have this happen. And they can let me know, yeah, this spring needs to be replaced here, this needs to be done there. But also, it lets me know, like, my that 223 that I had at Legion Sniper Challenge last year, that rifle would stop shooting sub MOA. So my groups would open up after 620 rounds.
Okay.
And it was like very consistent to about 620 rounds. So I knew that if I was getting ready to go shoot a major and I was, let's say, at 400 rounds, I needed to clean that barrel, because I was going to shoot past that round count at that point. And then I would, I just threw away, a 3-day match or a 2-day match and all that, however much money I've got invested into the ammo and all my time and travel and all that. So I say it is very important, but sometimes you got to let it run until it fails, so you understand what the limits of that firearm are. So just know your gun, right? Yeah.
I mean, hunting, shooting, anything, practice, pattern your shotguns, know your gun.
Correct. Yeah. And that I take that philosophy with all my competition guns and actually apply them to all of my carry guns too, right? Because I go back to what I was saying earlier, that is actually the most important firearm that's on me, right? And so it's like, I'll buy. I've been running the 147 grain bonded through my stuff, so I'll buy a bunch of boxes of that, and I'm just going to the range and I'm shooting that, because I need to know how long it will last with that.
Right.
Not 124 grain practice ammo.
Right, exactly. I mean, when you're carrying, it's important that you're practicing with as close as you can get to what you're actually going to use on, God forbid, the day of whatever happens.
Yep.
So, I mean, really good. Do you have any advice for anyone who is going to either jump into a different shooting world, or maybe someone who's entering the shooting world for the first time?
Yeah, I think if we start with somebody that's just new to it, just find a local range. You really don't need anything. You can just show up to a match and watch. They love new people to come in, because we're in the industry and all we want to do is educate people on firearms and firearm safety, and they're not this big scary thing that's out there, right? And so, like, every match I've ever been to, whether it was a local or a major, somebody just shows up. They're going to help you. They're going to talk to you about everything. And they're, if you want to shoot a match, typically they have enough gear at that match to get you set up with everything you need, and they will loan you ammo and everything to go shoot a match, at least one stage. And I just, take advantage of that. Don't be scared. Don't be nervous. Nobody's going to make fun of you. Nobody's going to, pick on you or anything like that, because they understand where, like, everybody's been at that point, right? So just show up. Be open-minded, have a good personality, and be ready to have a good time, because that's exactly what's going to happen. And you're going to make probably my best friends are from the shooting sports now. Like, those are the only guys I hang out with. Nathan and I are still really good friends. He's still shooting, so we still, of course, naturally talk. And plus, I gave him his only black eye ever. I gave it to him, so I got to keep him as my friend, so I always brag about that.
Right.
But all my other friends I got from shooting. And then if you're changing disciplines, you've already been shooting competition for a while, so you probably know who is one of the best shooters in that discipline. They have a reason why they're the best shooter. Give them a call, reach out to them. They're in that position because somebody taught them, and they're going to go ahead and teach you. And they want competition. They want somebody to come up and push them, because that's how they're going to get better. Right. So just reach out to them, talk to them. They'll tell you what to do. Like Max, Josh, and even Dave, they've all told me things that I needed to do that they wish they would have done earlier to get to a certain point. So
yeah, especially you were just talking about how to get to 0 to hero.
Yeah,
people are helping you do that. So
yeah. And they know, like, if I can get there, then naturally I become their competition. But they don't care, right? We're here to have a good time and all learn.
So very welcoming community.
Yes. It's probably awesome. The best community I've ever been part of.
Well, I love that. Thank you so much for coming, taking time out of your NRA show to come in with me.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
This was a good time.
It's been great. We'll probably have you on the show again. So
I'll actually be coming through in July.
Well, there you go.
I'm going to do a tour.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Yeah.
So be looking out for the next Dustin Sanchez.
So, yes. Got you.
The next Dustin Sanchez podcast episode. Well, there you have it, guys. Remington is on the rise. Like, comment, subscribe, and be sure to share this podcast with your hunting or shooting buddies. If you want to get a hold of me or Dustin Sanchez here, you can email me at podcast@remington.com. Thanks for listening.